What's up, YouTube? I am super excited. I'm always a little bit more excited than usual when we have an international guest on the show, especially when that dude is just such a cool person and a good friend of ours. So we're going to dive straight into how flexibility can actually make you stronger. And I'm very excited because we've got a guy here who is both very flexible and very strong, more so than probably even Rad and I, at least in the strong area. Anyway, we're going to dive into it right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. I'm one of the co-founders of Unity Gym and co-creators of the UMS, the Unified Movement System, where we take driven people and turn them into superhumans. And the way we get such amazing results with our program is that we've created a true balance between strength and flexibility. If you want to know how we do that, you can download one of our free blueprints. We've got the flexibility blueprint, the strength blueprint, and the nutrition blueprint. There's a link in the description of this video for all of them. As always, I'm joined by my brother Yanni here, the co-founder of Unity Gym, and today a very special guest, Ben Pakulski, former Mr Olympian competitor and all-round gentle giant. How you doing, Ben?
Gentle giant. Is that the first time you've ever been introduced as a gentle giant?
I don't know about the giant thing anymore. Thank you. Man, love Australia. Love you guys. So grateful to be able to get over here and see you again. I always make sure I get over here anytime I'm in Australia. Yeah,
man. Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. You always bring a really positive energy with you, man. And I was
just going to say, every time you come, you look even more healthy, more vibrant. What's going on, man?
Oil of Olay, man. So, just being conscious of realizing that there's a lot of stuff that goes into health, and it's not just one thing, right? And we're talking about this is, most people will focus on nutrition, and most people focus on training, and it's all these things. It's spirituality, it's relationships, it's stress management, it's mindset optimization, it's your environment, and really paying attention to the little stuff. And I tend to be a little bit neurotic, not to the point that it's stressful, but to the point that I won't bend on a lot of things. I think that's, it's just a habit now. It's not like, it certainly doesn't need to be a stress. You never want to be, panicking about, oh no, there's blue light, or I'm panicking because I'm eating bad food, or I just try to be a little bit conscious and be in control of all the things in my life. It's this idea of living life on purpose rather than just being, kind of letting life happen to you.
Absolutely. We actually did a show on living on purpose just 2 weeks ago. So all of you should be really well versed on what he meant by that.
Yeah, it's one of those areas that a lot of people are quite unconscious about, isn't it? And it's one of the things that I think it's our duty as people that are aware of it in the health and fitness industry to educate people that there is so much more to it than just going to the gym and lifting weights, or God forbid, just hitting the pavement and running.
Yeah, I think where people go wrong is they're of this mentality of, hey, I'm in a stressful situation. How do I become present in it? And it's not even possible, right? It's kind of like, you guys understand the breathing, right? We want to have very, very conscious breathing, methodical breathing. Well, that doesn't happen when you're in the deepest depths of your heaviest squat, right? It happens when you're in a very calm and controlled environment. And the same thing's happening in life. It's just learning how to, create those mindful moments, whether it be at the beginning of the day or before you eat or before you go to bed, to anchor in that consciousness, being present, right? So it's this concept of meditation. When you call it what you want, call it prayer, call it being present, being mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, but just taking a moment to just be present inside your body. Pay attention to what's going on inside your mind, what's going on inside your body. And I've been using this example a lot, but I'll use it again because it's very, very useful. I talked to a neuroscientist, a friend of mine, and he says every human being has the ability to be in two places at once. So you have the ability to hold a conscious thought and then, usually two conscious thoughts. And most people live in the past and the future, right? They're worrying about what they did in the past, and they're stressing about the future. What you should be aiming to do is living in the here and the now, right? So I want to live inside my body and outside of my body, but both in the present, right? So when I'm inside my body, I'm thinking about, my breath, or I'm thinking about my muscle tone, or I'm thinking about something inside my body, and I'm also thinking about being present here with you. So that's outside of my body, but both of them are here and now. So I'm living in the now and now. And certainly you can project forward to the future and go, this is where I want to be in the future. Let's create a visual and go there. But you certainly don't want to live in the past and the future, with most people are living in. Some people live in the past of the past, and some people live in the future, but both of those can cause stress and anxiety. We want to learn to live in the here and the now, and that doesn't start, like I say, when you're stressed. It starts when your unconscious is clear. You wake up in the morning, you're just completely blank slate, and you go, I just want to think about what does that feel like, right? What does that feel like to be conscious and be present, and taking those moments, those micro moments, those micro increments to be present. And that's how it starts for people, right? It's not just like this endeavor of going from 0 level of consciousness to high. It's just micro kind of triggers to allow you to just become present.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that a lot of people are just completely unaware of, you know, even myself, who I consider to be at a higher level than the average person, I still, you know, get reminded sometimes by my wife, and even just with this conversation with you, just how much better I can do at this stuff. So, you know, if you're watching this show and this is really new to you, it's, you know, there's some really good ways you can get started, and a great way is just with really short daily meditation, isn't it? It's
Well, so one thing I want to offer the listener, and I talked about this really recently. I said I just did a podcast with somebody who talks about this. This is something I've been teaching for a really long time, but it's a great book. And this guy just basically quantified and backed it up with all the data of everything I've been
this is the one
talking
you were
about.
talking to me about
Yeah.
before the show.
So the book's called Brainwash. It's Dr. David Perlmutter, and the simple explanation that he so eloquently describes in the book is, you know, most of us, you know, effectively, you think of the brain, it's obviously very complex, but if you simplified it to having this, you know, kind of animalistic, your lower brain, like your lizard brain, your amygdala, and you had your human brain, which is your prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is very much around consciousness and thought and being present, where the amygdala is very reactionary and very primal and very animalistic. And anything that you do...
Opportunity or threat, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So this threat-based brain. So many things in life are forcing us to reinforce the neural network into the amygdala, right? So what does that mean? That means we wake up in the morning, we check our phone, we're stressed. You're not being responsive, you're being reactive. So, you know, inflammatory foods are forcing you to reinforce an amygdala-based pathway. Stress, cell phones, cars, like anything that's reinforcing stress, bad food, all these things are reinforcing these amygdala-centered neural networks. And the more you reinforce that becomes your default. Right? So what we want to do is we want to go, okay, where's effectively my amygdala hijacking my life, and how do I then become more prefrontal cortex dominant, meaning I actually just need to become more present. I need to learn how to kind of anchor the prefrontal cortex as a foundation of who I am. This is my default rather than that is my default. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So the simple ways to start thinking about it is I have to do something every single day that's reinforcing this prefrontal cortex pathway neural network. And the reality is the way our society is designed is it's designed to hijack your amygdala. Like it's designed to just have you in amygdala-based reactions. Why? Television, cars, food. Why? Well, because people who live in fear and anxiety are consumers.
Yeah.
Right? When you're always running away from something, when you're always fearful, you have to do something outside of you to change your state. If you knew that everything you needed to live your happiest life was already there, you don't need to consume something outside of you. I don't need to eat. I don't need to eat sugar. I don't need drugs. I don't need pharmaceuticals. It's all already there. Now you're not a functioning, contributing member of society, right? Because now, like I'm completely fulfilled. I don't need anything outside of myself. Yeah. So now the economy starts to have a bit of a downturn. So this stuff is all perpetuated through the news and through television and through, you know, everything we hear in politics, just mongering fear and segregation and separation amongst the classes. And I highly suggest the book. You did a great job. But you know, this is stuff we know is built into society.
Just say the title of the book again.
Brainwash.
Brainwash.
By who?
David Perlmutter.
Oh man, I'm all over it.
Yeah.
I love it. And what I find is, I mean, I'm very aware. Yanni and I are both very aware of this stuff. But I find that I have to periodically, monthly, quarterly, yearly, sort of recalibrate myself, and like you take a step back and go, oh my God, you know, I've let this stuff creep back into my life.
So easy.
You know, I've got to, you know, and sometimes Yanni reminds me, and sometimes I remind Yanni, where we're like, dude, you know, we actually just did that a month ago. We restarted our year and we sat down and went, man, look at all this crap that's crept back into our life, and look at the way we're living, and we're not you know,
it's beautiful you say that, because nobody's immune to it, myself included, yourself included. It's manipulation at the neurochemical level, and you're not in control. You have to. This is why people, who are successful in life, the most successful people, as you guys know, talk about your morning routine. It's this idea that I preach all the time. It's like either you create your mind or someone's going to create it for you. Yeah. So you wake up in the morning. Wake up in the morning, you create your mind before the world creates it for you. And so you're going to sit down, you're going to meditate, you're going to become present, you're going to say, who am I going to be today? How am I going to show up? What's the greatest thing I can do today? The single thing I can do today that's my greatest contribution to the world. And now I'm becoming, I'm literally creating, as we spoke about earlier, this avatar of like this powerful, strong, empowered person that I'm going to take into the world rather than going in and being a victim. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to be empowered, right? I'm going to go in and I'm going to be the owner of my life rather than victim of my life. And if people can take that away from and take that into life is your oyster.
I think this was. I mean, I spoke about this when we did our series on goal setting and mindset, and I went deep into psychology. Then I had another friend of mine, Scott Swall, who's a performance coach, a success coach, on the show talking about this exact same thing. And I think that this is, and I'm so glad that you're here bringing it up now again, because people relate to you as someone who has achieved a very high level of success. And I have never met anybody who. Actually, I take that back. Gary Vaynerchuk's probably the only really successful person I've ever met who's just disconnected from this shit. He doesn't think about it much, but he does a lot of it, He dictates everything all day, the moment he wakes up. I think he's just wired that way. But when I asked him about, conscious thought and this and that, he just said, I don't know, I just fucking think that way, But I've spoken to so many other people, and this is such a poignant thing that so many people get wrong. They wake up in the morning and become reactive to everything that's happening in their life, as opposed to making a conscious thought of how. And I love the way you just put it. How am I going to show up? Who am I going to be today? Because we've all got, and we just had this huge deep talk between the three of us about conflicting stuff that's going on in our lives that's preventing us from showing up as our best self to drive the business forward,
So here's why, right? So here's why I think this happens. And again, this is my theory, but so right now, each of us has a resting default feeling, tone inside of our body, right? Call it like sentience, the way our body feels at our heart level, at our energetic level, whatever level you want to be at. And if we know that consuming that coffee can give me a positive +1 benefit, my brain becomes addicted. I get a reward. If that carbohydrate can give me just a slight positive, better feeling, that's a positive reward. Like, I want more of that. Yeah. So no matter what it is, and in society, people start to become trained with external rewards, with external mechanisms of making themselves feel better. From the time you're born into consumerism. You're born into like, hey, buy those nice shoes, and all these things. You have to have a nice house, you have to have a nice car, you have to keep up with everybody else. Otherwise, you're lesser than them. That makes you feel less. Well, I don't want to have a net negative. I want to have a net positive. So we're born into this society and this culture of like, I have to pursue things outside of myself to feel better. It's just nonsense. It's all already there. But people aren't taught from a young age, hey, it's breathing, it's meditation, it's gratitude, it's smiling, it's going outside. Those are the things that ultimately should be the things that are giving you the net positive neurochemical response, right? Yeah. But most people are getting so much negative net neurochemical response from the stress and the amygdala-based responses from the TV and social media and all these things that are just, ubiquitous in our life. It's almost impossible, man. Because it's so easy for you when you wake up in the morning, like, I really don't feel so good. Food. I don't feel so good. Social media. I don't feel so good. Whatever, coffee, alcohol, whatever the vice may be. It's just a net positive, right? So it's literally impossible unless you start creating. We talk about habits, right? We want to create these conscious habits so it ultimately become unconscious.
Well, it's funny as well because I agree exactly with what you're saying and even with what you were saying, Yanni, because we were all the same. Like, I can't speak for you, Ben, but you and me were. Like, until you become aware of this stuff, you're just living your life on default. You're reacting to everything, and you see something, you react to it, and that kind of shapes you to who you are. And there's this old saying, you're the net worth of the 5 people that are closest to you. And it's an interesting concept to think about. What you have to go through to make these changes, because everything that you just said, like, alcohol, coffee, food, they're instant gratification. So you can go from, I don't feel so good, to, I'm going to have this, and you get an immediate reaction, but then you crash as quickly.
Yeah, but your brain sees it as like reward, right? Your brain goes, good,
exactly.
More.
But all the things that that we're talking about and that you're talking about, they're not things that necessarily give you that. You don't get that feeling straight away. Like if you're out of shape and you say, "I'm gonna."
It depends, because this is, and sorry to cut you off.
No, that's all right.
This is something, I think, first of all, I'll say I think it goes far beyond an interesting concept. I think it's a critical concept that people start to open up to, because the majority of people, when I talk to people who come into the gym or to friends, they're not happy with their situation. There's something that they're not happy with. It's either a job or a relationship or health, so I think it's a critical concept, because most of those things don't change unless you become, you achieve a heightened level of consciousness and you take action, you know. Now, like the concept of sort of, I don't know, I was going to say fumbling through life, being reactive to the things that are going on around you, you have to make a choice to stop doing that. Like
but I don't think it's even possible for most people, right? Like, because you're so manipulated, for lack of a better word, by the system.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Television is driving fear. If you ever watch the news, your brain is always in fear. If you ever go on social media, your brain is in fear, and they're curating that. So until you have something in your life that makes you stop and become conscious, until you create a practice, every day I'm not going to be reactive. You don't stand a chance. As you said, with all of us, we're all getting sucked back into the matrix, right?
Even people like us that are aware of it. Just quickly, let's give a couple of shout outs. So we've got Quock Newen is watching and saying, "Morning everyone, keen for this video." Thanks, Quock. We've got Bioseed. So Kumaran is saying, "Morning all, really enjoying this and agree about needing to declutter your life." Thanks, brother. Thanks for the comment. And Benji Williams is saying, Pearl Mutter has some other great books as well. Grain Brain changed my life 8 years ago.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for the comments, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Benji. I'm going to check this out, because it's an author. He's an author that I have not read anything.
Brain Maker, Grain Brain, Brainwash. Fantastic. Read the trilogy. He's got more than that. He's got cookbooks and stuff. But he's a super bright guy. Super bright guy. He was just on my podcast, and that's not out yet, but it'll be out soon. And just love his message, man. And again, it's what everyone needs to hear. It's this reality that's being perpetuated in social media and television. But again, first learning that you are a victim of it is the first step in changing.
Exactly right.
You're not getting outside of control. You're in that. But I hope a small percentage of us can become conscious enough of, okay, I know this is happening. If I'm consciously aware of it often enough, eventually I can move myself outside of the box, right? Living inside the box of manipulation, of consumerism, of having to consume, materialism. So.
It's interesting, this year we took our kids to Europe instead of Christmas, during Christmas, and it was the first year that we haven't had a Christmas where we gave them gifts and things like that. Instead, we spent an absolute fortune traveling to 5 countries in Europe. But the kids didn't know any different.
No.
I think on Christmas morning I went to the supermarket and got a couple of little Matchbox cars and wrapped them up, and so they could open something, and they played with them in a sandpit, and they just had the most epic time.
And they'll remember that forever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Experience trumps things any day of the week.
We did the same. We took the kids to the mountains this year in North Carolina. Same idea,
Yeah, and it was just epic, really, really good. Okay, so I want to steer this into the direction.
I was just about to say that.
Oh, really? of what I've titled the video, which is how flexibility makes you stronger. Now, Richie, have you got a couple of those photos of Ben and Rad stretching? I want to just show, because I'm always blown away. I've known Ben for a few years now, and since your sort of peak, I guess, prime bodybuilding days, which would have been 2014, maybe.
Yeah.
When did you
2013 was the first time I was
come
here.
10th in Olympia? What year was that?
2012.
Yeah. So we've been a year after.
Year after that. Yeah, that's right. And you've lost a bit of size, obviously. You were saying out there. How many kilos have you?
Some down, probably 25.
You were about 140 back then, weren't you? 137, I think you were walking around when I met you the first time.
Yeah, you'd remember me. I usually, pounds, I'd fluctuate between 300 and 315.
Yeah.
Whatever that converts
to. And what are you now?
Under 260, so 255. So whatever that is, 120 kilos.
Yeah. So the thing that surprised me the most, when you first came to Unity a year ago, Rad was carrying on about it for weeks after. He's going, I can't believe how flexible Ben was for his amount of muscle.
Well, I've never
mass,
seen
you
it
know.
before. Like when we see guys, the bigger the guy that comes into the gym, normally the less flexible they are.
Sure. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, because most guys that are, most people, it's it's hard to run towards something without running away from something else. And so a lot of the time, the bigger the guy, the stronger they are, the less that time they've spent doing any kind of flexibility. And I was just blown away by taking you through that stuff and how easily you went through it. I was like, oh man, this guy's going to struggle with what we're going to do. And you were loving it. You were eating it up.
Yeah. So my first experience with a very strong person who blew me away with flexibility was Dmitry Klokov, who is a Russian. Do you know Dmitry?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I did a workshop with him, and I was I like to always try and time it so I get there early, because you can often catch the guys training or doing their own thing, and I did. And I was blown away by how long he stretched for. And it wasn't stretching, it was mobility training, but he did most of it with a barbell. So he was doing 20 kilos or whatever, but then he did this whole sequence of different movements like duck jumps and duck walking and things with sometimes 60 or 80 kilos above his head in a snatch position and things like that. And he did this whole sequence and routine where he was, and I was kind of like, wow, you do a lot of mobility and flexibility. He goes, man, I lift weights for about 40 minutes to an hour, and I stretch for about 2 hours before that, And he said most of the Olympic weightlifters do the same thing. He probably doesn't do enough mobility training. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then to see you out there, so flexible, I have a theory, and that is that becoming really flexible, if you're developing end range strength, makes you stronger. Because for me personally, I've never felt better in a squat or a deadlift or a bench press, which are the classic strength movements, than I do now. And I'm not anywhere near as strong as you. For my weight, I wouldn't stand a chance in a powerlifting competition. But compared to the average person, I'm certainly considered quite strong. What do you think about the concept or the notion of flexibility making you stronger?
Well, I like to differentiate between flexibility and mobility, right?
Yep.
So flexibility to me, when I think of flexibility, as I define it, is the ability to get into a range of motion passively.
Yep.
Versus when I think of mobility, I think it's active.
Yep.
And I think that's a very, very important distinction to make. So stretching into a range and being flexible to go somewhere is not the same as being able to actively control it there.
Yep.
So what I aim for, and as I said, like I do yoga, but I don't do yoga for yoga. I don't do yoga for what people would associate yoga to be. It's not a flexibility thing for me. It's a mobility thing for
Yep.
me. Like ultimately, I'm going to increase flexibility, but it's very more improving my active ranges, right? So I want to improve the ranges that I can control my body in. Okay,
Yep.
so why do we want to control? Well, if I can't control it, I can't load it.
Yep.
And so it's important for people to know that mobility and stability, I believe, are inseparable. So
Yep.
if I have poor mobility, chances are I'm going to have poor stability as well. That's why your brain tends to sense instability, lack of stability, and tightens up.
Yep.
It's a protective mechanism. So if I can improve stability, I'll thereby improve mobility. And if I improve mobility, hopefully I can improve stability. They should be kind of this thing that these go hand in hand.
Yep.
So when I go to yoga, or when I first went to yoga, what I noticed was my ability to improve stability, because we're going into these end ranges and we're spending time in those end ranges. It's not just like, hey, go there and relax. It's like go there actively with control and exude stability and ultimately control in these end ranges. And then eventually the end ranges become longer and longer and longer, because one, I'm obeying what my body has, and my body goes, hey, I'm strong in this position. We can go a little bit further. I'm strong in this position. I go a little bit further. Because if my brain sensed that I was weak in the position, it sensed instability, it would tighten up. It's a protective mechanism. So the more time I spend there, the more confident I get there, the more ultimately mobility I gain, the more my brain will open up and give me even more mobility correlatively. And so I've noticed tremendously, like you say, my squat's gone up, my bench press is maybe not gone up, but it's from my peak, but certainly more stable. Like my shoulders are so much more stable. So I'm able to get into these end ranges and actually be loaded and not feel like things are going to break.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm after, right? Is like, how can you get super, super strong, maintaining these maybe extended active ranges of motion, so that, active with mobility rather than just passive flexibility.
Yep, absolutely.
Can we, Richie, have you got that picture? Have you brought it up?
I'll put it up now.
So put it up now. Is it up? Let me know, because We've got a delay here, so
We're working with a 20-second
So
delay,
is it on there?
folks.
Yeah.
it's on.
So you can see there, Ben is one flexible dude, especially for somebody that's as muscular and strong as he is. It's so he's speaking from experience here. He's not speculating. So yeah.
I think that what you and what you've pointed out there, which is something that we are huge advocates of, is we refer to it as end range strength, and I think that passive flexibility is probably, in many cases, can create instability. You
Totally.
know?
Yep.
And this is one thing that I dislike about the way a lot of people approach flexibility training, and I'm sure Rad will agree with me, is that they do a lot of stretching, but they don't strengthen those. They can't load that.
Well,
they
so
don't
if
have
you
that
think about what's
stability.
happening, like my brain goes, okay, what's happening inside my body? If I take my joint or my muscle to a position where it's not strong and stable, your brain goes, shit. Let's protect this thing.
Yeah,
So it's going to literally tighten up. It's usually going to be pro-inflammatory.
Yep.
Whereas if I'm staying within what my body can kind of control, or I'm giving my brain like a little bit more time, a little more stability in that position, it's not going to be an inflammatory response. It's not going to be this like sympathetic, hypertensive type thing. It's going to be a relaxation type thing, or at least a control type thing. Your brain goes, hey, I can adapt to this.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is the big distinction to make, is it's not I'm trying to just shove myself into places, especially with resistance, that I can't otherwise go, right? And you see a lot of bodybuilders or powerlifters who, they put 20 kilos in the bar, they go down halfway, they put 40 kilos on each side, and also they go down almost all the way, and then it takes 60 kilos aside to make it all the way to the bottom of the squat, and you're just like, man, think about what's happening at your joint, right? So the muscles can't physically get you there. Yeah. So it takes that amount of resistance to shove you there. Now everyone goes, I don't know why my hips and my back hurt when I'm squatting.
Yeah.
Well, I do.
I do.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this a new thing for you, Ben, like to be pursuing mobility like this, or is it like relatively, or is this something that you were doing in your bodybuilding
So
days?
I was always super, super aware of improving my mobility. It wasn't always my top priority. So obviously now, as I mentioned, like I have this kind of really simplified routine where I do one day of strength, one day of stability, mobility, which is yoga, and then one day of aerobic work. And I just kind of rotate through them. When I'm on the road, it changes a little bit, but it's always been a conscious thought of mine. It may have just been a different proportion in the past, where maybe it's like 1 or 2 days of mobility a week, or maybe it's at the end of the workout for 10 or 15 minutes, rather than now it's like I give it this whole, because for me it's also a consciousness endeavor, right? It's a 90-minute yoga session where I'm just removed from the world. I'm super inside my body, paying attention to myself, focused on my breath, and almost it's a meditative experience, whereas in the past it was more like a physical benefit. Now it's this integration of mind and body that I'm looking for, so it's a little bit of a different experience.
You've always been very methodical about your training, and I even remember, I don't know what year it was, but I remember they used to have these pre-Olympia press conferences with all of you guys lined up, and you'd get asked questions, and there was always a little bit of banter between yourself and some of the other boys about your approach to training. You had a very scientific methodology, and you were much more methodical about form and technique and range of movement. And I can't remember who it was one year that you got into a bit of an argument with in the press conference. And
I don't remember. Of course I remember.
and you...
Well, it was everybody, to be honest. Like there was everybody, because I am methodical about it, and my argument against it, or against them, was I'm not as genetically blessed as you. Like, you can get away doing dumb shit, and if I do that, I don't build muscle.
Yeah.
And I know that because I've gone through that all, right? So until I became very conscious of what I'm doing, until I learned how to not just lift a weight, but actually direct where that tension is going. So if I put 50 kilos on the table and I say, Yanni, pick it up. Okay, I'll pick it up. And your body will use whatever is easiest, path of least resistance. Yeah. So it's going to use the biggest muscle groups, and then the small muscle groups are going to get proportionally less work. What if I said, Yanni, pick up that 50 kilo dumbbell with just your bicep? That's a very different experience.
Yeah.
You're still doing the same thing, same end result, very different internal experience. So that's really how this worked, is like, hey, I want you to pick that up with only using your lat or only using your pec, and it's this very isolating experience. And to do that now, I have to be very aware of the reality that my body wants to revert back to path of least resistance. Always. It's an evolutionary thing to save energy and keep you safe. So I have to be so present and conscious to go, what's actually doing the work, what's actually doing the work, what's actually doing the work. So point being, everyone seemed to think, hey man, just shut up and lift and work heavy.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I outworked every one of them.
Yeah.
but I also did it with accuracy.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
nobody would have been able to, because like what you don't realize is when you actually pick up a weight with one muscle, it's so much exponentially harder physically and mentally, right? I got to be locked in mentally, otherwise you don't stand a chance.
Yep.
And nobody would have been able to sustain those workouts. And I challenged anybody. I was like, listen, man, come.
Yeah.
You know, you'll last a
Man,
fraction.
I did it for a couple. I tried to do it for a couple of weeks, and I certainly have never experienced anything like it. By the end of the second week in Sydney training with you, I was more jacked than I'd ever been in my life.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
It's really, you know, people.
Holy
you
crap!
know,
I came back and we did some workouts. You remember that? And it was just a mind-blowing experience.
I hated those workouts.
So, well, you're basically trying to make it as least, and this what you said there, the path of least resistance, the most least advantageous when you're working a muscle, when you're training with intent to really flex that muscle and stimulate that muscle group, and it was just incredible. Like I remember doing a workshop with you, and there was a lot of ego destruction there because there was a lot of guys there who were really having to deload the weight, even me, you know? Like, I came in there thinking, yeah, I can bench press like 140 kilos, and you had me on like 60 kilos screaming like a little girl, you know? Like
it's a different scenario, right? It's taking away your strengths and isolating your weaknesses. And I mean, we know in life or in anything, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we're going to go, hey, you're not good with this.
Yeah.
Let's do more of that. Let's spend more time there. Let's do a little more frequency with that. Well, you're really good with this. We still want to do that. We don't want to neglect that, but we're going to spend maybe a little less time and focus on that to allow these other things to balance out. Then you have less injuries, better mobility, better stability, better overall health. And that's kind of how I approach this.
The
And
less
that's what
injuries.
so few people are doing, isn't it? Because you put people on something that they're not good at, and they just go, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to keep
The
going
less
with
injuries and what you've just said there is so important because just about everyone I was training with at that point in time has come and gone.
Well, so why,
gone.
right? And we think about this, and it's just perfect correlation with what we're talking about earlier in the conversation, is nobody does anything mindfully, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is just mindless. Give me the workout, like, give me the fish, don't teach me how to fish, right? It's like, just tell me what to do. I don't want to think.
Yeah.
Well, actually asking somebody to think, especially in a workout, is like, what are you talking about, man? I just want to do it. I just want to, grind my teeth and lift this weight. Well, no, that's not the path, man. That's not going to make you better as a person. It's not going to make your mind stronger. It's not going to make your body optimized, right?
Yeah.
And I really believe that your greatest opportunity for development lies in that workout, in that 60 to 90 minutes you have every day. You have your greatest opportunity to change your mind, to become mindful, the greatest opportunity obviously to change your body, but also to change your emotions. And this people don't understand is you can start to really anchor this confident, empowered, goal-achieving person in every single set and in every single rep, right? I can literally anchor that within the workout. I can either choose to take the easy path and just lift this thing and be mindless about it, or I can actually become very present and focus on how can I make this as hard as I possibly can for my muscle, realizing that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So everything I do in every single moment is either reinforcing a habit that I don't want or creating one that I do want. It's always the same, right? Yeah. So if I'm in the gym and I'm saying, I'm just going to be mindless, I'm just going to go in there and grunt, well, great, that's awesome, but guess what's going to then be transferred to the rest of your life? It's just going to keep transferring. So what you guys do is beautiful because you're asking people to become present. Hey, I want you to think about what's happening here. I want you to become present in this mobility, and I want you to become strong with these end ranges. And like to do that, it takes this thing. Right? It's not just like, hey, I'm just going to throw you somewhere and say, like CrossFit you, like go lift this as many times as possible. It's like, hey, I actually want you to do this with some mindfulness and some presence. And then guess what? Now I've reinforced that 5 times a week during my workouts. And when I leave here, I'm exponentially more present and mindful because I'm doing it when my brain is in its most plastic state, which is during the workout, right?
Yeah, and another thing that's super important, which we spoke about this morning, is the concept that triggers or it harnesses this concept of intrinsic motivation, which you can probably talk all day about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had this. Yanni and I actively tried to create a program that harnessed intrinsic motivation rather than extrinsic motivation, and we just had a really good bit of validation this week where one of our new members is a teacher, and his job is to find a way to turn the programs that they teach to children into something that intrinsically motivates them.
I love it.
And he spoke about the 3 areas, which I'm going to try and strain my brain now to see if I can remember them. But he said one of them is autonomy. You have to create something that is autonomous where people have a feeling like they're in control of what they're doing. Another one is, I can't remember the exact word that he used, but competence, where it made you feel that you can do it, it is achievable. And do you remember the last one? Do you remember what the third one was?
No.
There was autonomy, competence, and
I could open it on the email.
Anyway, but yeah, that's one of the and he was pointing out that our workouts are connection, feeling
right.
connected to it. So, and he was talking about how our workouts really tick all those 3 boxes, and it was a really good validation for us because we'd never looked at it from that perspective. But
From a scientific standpoint, yeah.
it was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Let's quickly, we've got Quack is asking you a question, Ben. So this is one of our long-time viewers. Quack is saying, Ben, how did you do hypertrophy work at the same time be super flexible?
Great question, because ultimately they can be viewed at the deepest level as opposing signals, right? So we don't want to be over flexible because flexibility can take away from our stability. So what we're looking at, as you guys speak of perfectly, is end range stability. I want to have this end range mobility and end range stability, and that's the necessity in muscle building. So one of the simplest ways for people to understand what I do is this kind of 3 terms that I'll throw out, and it's mobility, skill, and stability. And those 3 things have to be there for you to build muscle. So if I can't access it, so if Yanni's got terrible external rotation in his shoulder, well, and he goes, hey man, I want to build my pecs. Put as much weight on the bar as you want. You're never going to build your pecs because you have to be able to access the range of motion before you can train the range of motion. So if you don't have the prerequisite mobility to get there, you don't build the muscle. Now I can get you into the range, but do you have the ability to stabilize any type of load there, right? And then, okay, that's step 2. So mobility, stability, skill. Third one being skill. Obviously, I need to be able to do this in a graded way as I add load. Because doing it with 10 kilos is awesome, but then as soon as I go 20, everything goes out the window. I have to reinforce that skill as I go deeper and deeper and deeper into those loads. So I have to have the requisite mobility, and then I have to scale stability because as I said, as I put more weight in my hand, skill goes out the window, and your body can't stabilize. So it's important to know that this is kind of reinforcing what you guys speak of, is your body will literally downregulate muscular contraction if it senses instability. So if I'm standing on a Bosu ball or a wobble ball or something and my brain senses that, it'll downregulate my ability to contract muscles, bottom line. So if there's any instability at any joint, your body will contract less muscle. So therefore, we know that stability and load have a 1-to-1 correlation. So the more stable I am at my shoulder joint, the more output I have at my pec. The more stable I am at my shoulder joint, the more output I have at my bicep, my tricep. The more stable I am at my pelvis, the more output I have at my lower body. So you're talking about your bottom of your squat. Well, you're stable at your pelvis now, which gives your quads a greater ability to anchor from, right? And the simplest metaphor is if I hand you a rope, Brad, and I say, Brad, pull on this rope, and this is the muscle contraction, you pull that thing hard, and every time you pull it, I move with you. There's no tension being generated, right? So in order for you to generate tension in that rope, I need to be anchored. So I'm creating stability at the other end. So that's where stability kind of ties in. I need to be able to access the range of motion with massive amounts of stability. I need to be able to execute the skill.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
brilliant.
That's really cool.
And sorry, have you got someone else?
No. I was just going to say, I hope that answered your question, Quack.
And this is, now I want to bring it into what you're actually teaching right now, because you are here touring. And is this what you're teaching in the workshop? What are you teaching in the workshop at the moment, the muscle camp?
It's actually not. It's a small fraction, maybe. This year, so last year, this is what we taught. We taught like mechanics. We taught shoulder and joint health and hip health and spinal health, and that was kind of the foundation we taught here last year. This year, it's a bit of a shift. So, for many years, I taught muscle building exclusively. I'm like, here's how you train hard, here's how you build muscle. But this year, I realized that, or in the last maybe 5 years, I've come to the realization that most people tend to focus on one thing very myopically. Yep. So if you're a trainer, you think training is the most important. If you're a nutritionist, you think nutrition is the most important. But the reality is it's not. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that. Yep. So what I'm teaching is what I call the 6 pillars of a lean, healthy, and muscular body. So if I want to be lean, healthy, and muscular, what do I have to do? And there's the integration of understanding, obviously, training and movement ultimately. So here's actually how a simple way for you to frame it. What are the things that you can influence as a human being? How you move, how you think, how you eat, how you sleep, and how you think. 5 things really. There's only 5 things you can impact, and the environment in which you do them. That's your 6. That's all you can impact. Yep. So that's become my 6 pillars. Yeah, awesome. So I'm teaching people how to move, how to breathe, how to think, how to eat, how to sleep, and ultimately the environment in which we do them all is a massive signal to our biology, and then it all kind of trickles down from there. So I think most people don't understand, body optimization or health optimization. But if you go, hey, there's only really 6 things we can do here. Yeah. Like, which one of these is limited for you? Let's focus on that one. So if you're really bad at breathing, you're really bad at like your mindset, the thinking, let's work on that. If you're really bad at moving, let's work on that. We can work at all at the same time in different proportions. But that gives people a simple framework, and we can chunk down from there and go, okay, well, I'm really bad at this one. Let's spend more time there.
Yep.
And everything maybe goes in phases, right? We'll spend a month on this phase and a month on that phase. And I think the most important low-hanging fruit for most people is going to be stress and sleep. So we fix those, everything gets better. You don't cheat as much on your diet, your inflammation is much less, your body moves better. I think everything stems from that foundation.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Sure. And where are you? You're obviously doing a workshop in Sydney coming up now. Where else are you going on the tour? So
we've got a one-day event in Sydney tomorrow. So that's going to be at Kingdom Gym. And then so people can attend a one-day, which is like very, very theoretical. We're going to give you 8 hours of deep theory, but it's not just like, hey, here's the science. It's like, here's how to apply it.
Yeah.
And then following that up with 3 days of actually 2 workouts a day and applying those things while we also interject with programming and other things like that. Yep. And then next week, same idea. You got a one-day event Thursday in Melbourne at Doherty's, and then 3 days after that of training. Yep. So you can either come for one day, or you can come for 4, and then we're going to Bali. So the same thing in Bali at Body Factory in Bali. Yep. People can check that out at musclecamps.com.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
And you've never taught in Bali before, have you?
Never been. It's the first time. Yeah,
really.
You've been to the tropics much?
Caribbean. I've been often, but never like Indonesia or anything like that.
Hot as hell.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love Bali.
Awesome.
I just have this weird thing. I don't know if it's just men or women, because my stepdad gets it, but my mum doesn't, and Kalisha doesn't get it. Every time I freaking land and get off the plane, I smell the air and get Bali belly. And it's not like
You heard
horrible.
of Bali belly?
It's just that you feel
Have you
like
heard
you've
of
got
Bali
like a
belly?
light stomach upset the whole time, and I just get on with it and deal with it, but every time I go, Kalisha's just like no impact whatsoever. Same with my mum and stepdad. My mum will go and live there forever and love it, and my stepdad's like, oh my God, get me out of here, I just want to feel normal in the stomach again. So I hope you get away with it.
I might need some hacks if we have any listeners who have a hack.
Just be aware of where you eat.
If anyone has some hacks or ways to go to Bali and not suffer Bali belly, then hook us up with some comments down there.
Miss probiotics maybe, or prebiotics, or like gut diversity is always the
funny thing is, like, Kalisha and I eat exactly the same thing. We're pretty intense with our drinking water and things like that. That's exactly right. My gut microbiome is fried because I had a lot of antibiotics when I was a kid, and I think that's messed me up.
And did you take antibiotics when you messed your leg?
Oh yeah, all injuries. I've had that many from the injuries. I went to the doctor when I was younger because I had acne, and they put me on antibiotics. They just tend to think that fixed everything.
It does fix everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. So 5 years of my most important development, I was taking antibiotics. And I'm not saying, look, antibiotics sometimes are really beneficial, but at that point in my life, it was probably something I should not have done.
I think let's go for a feed.
Yeah,
I'm
all
gonna
this
start
gut
eating this microphone in a minute.
all this gut microbiome stuff is turning me on. Guys, how good was that? I know we got a lot of comments there saying that this was an epic discussion. I wish that we could get Ben on once a week, because I genuinely feel enlightened every time you come on the show.
I love it. Where can people go to connect with you more, Ben?
Easiest place to kind of learn more from me is Muscle Intelligence Podcast. So you can find that on iTunes or at muscleintelligence.com. I've got an entire network there of things that I kind of offer as assets for people to learn more. You can learn more about the 6 pillars. You can learn more about my nutrition modalities. Coaching, muscleintelligence.com.
And you're doing a lot of online coaching now too, aren't you?
So I'm doing coaching, not from a physique perspective yet. I'm building a team and I'm building a system around that. But I've been doing a lot of more like mentorship for CEOs and executives and people who want to optimize business and life. Yep. So not quite down the path of the physique optimization anymore. Obviously, that used to be my bread and butter, but I find that my greatest impact can be made with people who are not just focused on, hey, I just want to build a bunch of muscle. Because there's a lot of people out there that are very, very competent at that, right? I don't say good, but competent. They may have their limitations, but I think my value or my greatest contribution, hopefully, is in helping people to balance all the pieces, right? And like you guys understand, family, business, these different avatars we talked about, Rad. All these. How do you create this life where you're showing up in every one of these places and you're optimized and you're being your best, and you're being present, and then ultimately creating this mind that is supporting you through life rather than resisting you through life.
Yeah, I think I would actually love to do an entire show on that and the concept of avatars, because that's something that is just so profound.
We'll have to do it next time because I love it, and it's a concept that I was introduced to by you and absolutely loved it. But yeah, if you guys want to connect with Ben more, check out the Muscle Intelligence podcast. I've listened to a few episodes. It's unreal. He interviews some really cool people, some very influential people, some good authors.
Yep.
And
smash the hell out of that like button if you got a lot out of this episode, so that I can try and get Ben to come back again. And he only comes if you hit the like button. And if you disliked it, just double tap the dislike button. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to bring this one in for a landing so that we can go feed, because Rad will probably eat one of us. The smallest guy in here is Phil, so he's probably going to get eaten first. And everyone smash the like button for Phil running the camera while Richie had to duck out, and that's his first time. So awesome, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben. It's always a pleasure. Thanks, Rad, for bringing hair to the show.
I'm doing my best, yeah.
Guys, awesome. We'll catch you again tomorrow. We're going to continue on with the tendinopathy series. We got Phil back on the show again tomorrow, and we're gonna. No, he's not. No,
not tomorrow. Friday.
Friday.
Yanni and me will talk about
getting mentoring from an Olympian physio. So.
Oh, cool. Sorry. So Phil's dogging you all tomorrow, and he's back on Friday.
Yeah.
But it's me and Rad tomorrow. You better tune in. See you all. Have a great day.
See ya.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.